So, a pleasant day everyone. I am here to discuss about the thematic areas of the RRM. So the thematic areas correspond to the structures of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management. So, according to RA 10121, this is an illegal basis for creating the NDRRMC operates on 4 thematic areas or pillars. So there are 4 types of thematic areas. So first is the disaster prevention and mitigation. So this focus on taking actions to reduce the potential impact of a disaster before it occurs. So including land use planning, building codes, environmental protection, and hazard mapping to identify high-risk areas. So hirap po ito, for example, po hirap po ito naghahatag or nag-i-install ng mga disaster warning system. Tapos hirap po gihapon ito nagpo-purchase ng mga radio communication equipment. So the second one is the disaster preparedness. So, what is the disaster preparedness? This involves planning to effectively respond to a disaster, including the developing emergency response planning. So, hirap po ito naghahatag ng awareness, public awareness campaign, and community drills to ensure people know what to do in case of emergency. So, hirap po ito nag-educate, proper po nga dapat buhatan in times of calamities. So, harap po ito na naghahatag po planning and ozoning. So, dito, nag-raising awareness about the potential hazard and how to address things. So, dito ito nag-educate po hirahin. Ang masayan ko po, nag-educate po hirahin yung proper nga dapat buhatan in case or in time of disaster. Tapos, dito, disaster response. So, what is disaster response? This phase focuses on immediate action taken during a disaster to save lives, minimize damage, and provide essential assistance, including search and rescue operations, evacuation procedures, and emergency shelter provision. So, for example po, disaster response is an rescue operates. So, what ito? So, sa paghihapon, so, nag-set up po an education center. Evacuation center. So, hirap po gihapon ito hirap po gihapon ito naghahatag hinagahatag po mga shelter, labi na po in times of emergency. So, for the first one is the disaster rehabilitation and recovery. So, this aims to rebuild and restore affected communities back to normal after a disaster, including economic recovery initiative. So, support and long-term development project to build resilience. For example po, po ito for example po, iragin bubuhat is the housing assistance. Isa po ito nga iragin na hatag ng bubulig na komunidad. Financial assistance in individual. Hakada usa po. Nanhin, kuan gihapon po mga nagre-rebuild po hirahin mga road or bridge nga grabe talaga nga naghatag in impact. So dito na lang mga roads po is may natumba nga mga puno nga as in dagko talaga hiya nga mga bridge nga naruba nga dire hiya nakukuanan na sasakyan nga pwede talaga maagian. Manhin. So, that's all po, part po, thematic areas of the RRM.
Good day, everyone. Today, we will going to tackle about the implementation strategies of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan. meaning we will going to explore the different strategies of the NDRRMP in achieving their goals and objectives. Let's take a look first to the objectives of this lesson. First, we will going to explore the different strategies of the NDRRMP, and second, we will going to define each strategy and we will provide examples for further understanding. First, we have mainstreaming DRRM, similar to making safety part of everything. So under this mainstreaming DRRM, we have here the integration with development plans. Meaning, it is making sure safety is part of the plan and not just a separate thing. Example scenario, when building a new road, we need to consider how it will be affected by floods and landslides. Second, we have the policy alignment. Meaning, just like we have rules at school, our country has laws and rules to keep everyone safe. We need to make sure all the plans for safety follow those rules. Example scenario, we have here, if there's a law saying all buildings need to be earthquake resistant, we need to make sure all the buildings are built that way. Third, we have budget allocation. Of course, we need money to buy things like emergency supplies, train people, and build strong structures. We need to make sure there's enough money set aside to make our safety plans happen. Example scenario here, we need to set aside money to buy first aid kits for every classroom and to train teachers on how to use them. Second strategy, we have decentralization. It is giving power to local communities. Under decentralization, we have empowering local governments. Just like in our school, that has a student council, they can make decisions about things that affect our school. It is the same with our communities. Local leaders should have the power to make decisions about safety in our own areas. Example here, if a town is prone to flooding, the local government can decide how to build flood walls or create evacuation plans. Another, we have capacity building. Just like we learn new things in school, local leaders and people in our communities need to learn about safety as well. We need to train them on how to be prepared for disasters. That is one of the strategies. Example here, we can teach people in our community how to give first aid, how to use fire extinguishers, and how to make an emergency kit. Third, we have resource devolution. We need to give local communities the resources they need to keep themselves safe. This could be money, equipment, or any supplies. Example scenario here, giving local governments money to buy sirens, to warn people about typhoons, or build evacuation centers. Third strategy, we have participatory approach. It is working together for safety. So under this third strategy, we have community engagement, stakeholder participation, and public consultations. So for community engagement, it is listening to the people in our community and letting them help us make plans for safety. They know their area best and can tell us what they need. Example scenario, we can hold meetings to ask people what they are worried about and how we can make our community safer. Second, under the stakeholder participation, we need to work with our groups, like charities, businesses, and other organizations to make our safety plans work. Example scenario, we can ask a local business to donate supplies for an emergency kit or ask a charity to help us train volunteers. Then third, the public consultations, talking to people and getting their feedback for the plans. This helps making sure our plans are good and will work for everyone. Example here, we can hold public meetings to explain our safety plans and ask people for their suggestions. Fourth strategy, we have gender and inclusive approach. It is making sure everyone is safe. So under this strategy, we have gender-sensitive planning. So we need to think about how disasters affect girls and boys differently. For example, girls might need different kinds of help than boys after a disaster. Example scenario, we need to make sure evacuation plans are safe for everyone, including girls who might need to use separate bathrooms or have different needs. Next, we have social vulnerability assessment. Some people are more vulnerable to disasters than others, like older people, children, or people with disabilities. We need to make sure we're helping them to stay safe. Example scenario, we can make sure evacuation centers are accessible to people with disabilities, and what we have is special plans to help older people and children. Lastly, we have inclusive decision making. We need to make sure everyone has a voice in making safety plans, including people from different backgrounds and communities. Example scenarios, we can make sure our meetings are open to everyone, and we have translators available for people who speak in different languages. That is a nice strategy. Last strategy, we have monitoring and evaluation. Under this strategy, we have here performance tracking. So just like we check our homework to see how we're doing, we need to check how well our safety plans are working. We need to track our progress and see if we're making difference. Example here, we can keep track of how many people have been trained in first aid or how many emergency kits have been distributed. Second, the impact assessment. We need to see if our safety plans are actually helping people. We can look at things like how many injuries or deaths were avoided because of our plans. Example here, we can compare the numbers of injuries during a typhoon before we had our safety plans to the number of injuries after we implemented them. Then the third is feedback mechanisms. We need to listen to the people and get their feedback on how safety plans are working. So this helps us make sure our plans are good and will work for everyone. So example, we can ask people to fill out surveys or hold meetings to get their feedback on our safety plans. So those strategies that we have mentioned earlier are making sure that the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan is a strong and effective plan that helps us build a safer and more resilient Philippines.
Now I'm going to discuss about implementation mechanisms or things that are involved in putting VRMPs into action. And for the first one, we have risk assessments, wherein VRMPs conducts comprehensive risk assessment to identify hazards, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts. This provides a scientific basis for prioritizing risk reduction measures. And for the second one, we have early warning systems. And the RMP establishes robust or early warning systems to provide timely and accurate information about impending disasters, enabling communities to take appropriate measures. And lastly, the third one, we have disaster preparedness plans, wherein the RMPs develops detailed disaster preparedness plans that outline specific actions to be taken during or before, during, and after a disaster. This ensures a coordinated and effective response. And here is an example of implementation in the Philippines, and that is community engagement. As we all know, the NDRMP promotes community-based VRR initiatives, empowering communities to participate in risk assessments, planning, and implementation of VRR activities. This ensures that local knowledge and context are incorporated into VRR efforts. That's all. Thank you for listening and watching. Have a nice day.